Is there any phrase more terrifying than "we need to talk"? It's the universal signal that things are about to get tense. Whether you're hearing it from a parent, a friend, a teacher, boyfriend, girlfriend, it means there's a conflict that needs to be resolved. Let me ask you a question. Have you been in a fight recently?
What do we do, Cap?
We fight.
Are you fighting with someone now? In the middle of a fight, have you ever done something you regretted? Have you ever wished someone would just tell you how to resolve a fight peacefully?
What do you want? What do you want?
It's not that simple.
What do you want?
I mean, we all know what it's like to fight, but we don't always know how to make peace. So what is peace? How would you define it? To you, maybe peace means quiet or calm or not fighting. Maybe you've experienced peace when you were somewhere quiet by yourself. Maybe when everyone in your home was getting along. Maybe when you and your family and friend finally made up after a big fight. Peace is a great thing, but we often don't appreciate it until it's missing. Today, we're going to talk about having fights and making peace, because as we'll see, God has something to say about this, and it's pretty radical. But like we mentioned last week, there were a lot of people who thought Jesus was too radical. In the 90s, RAD meant cool, but its real meaning has to do with being different, revolutionary, and countercultural. What Jesus said about loving God and others was radical, and what he teaches us about peace, well, it's pretty radical too. Throughout this series, we're looking to the Bible for practical advice on how to change the world with God's radical love. And that search has led us to the book of James. Okay, remember, this book is a letter written by a guy named James, who was Jesus' brother. Because he knew Jesus so well, the letter of James wrote is packed with summaries of Jesus' teachings, retold in James' own words. James is known for his straightforward instructions on how to follow Jesus. And these teachings might seem simple, but they have the power to create radical change. So let's see what James says about peace and about fighting. James 3:16 says, "For where there is envy and selfish ambition, there is disorder and evil practice." And in James 4, we can see that it says, "What is the source of wars and fights among you? Don't they come from your passions that wage war within you? You desire and do not have. You murder and covet and cannot obtain. You fight and wage war. You do not have because you do not ask. You ask and you don't receive because you ask with wrong motives, so that you may spend it on your pleasures." Ouch. James gets straight to the point here. Why do we fight with each other? Because, it boils down to the fact that we're selfish. And he's right. We fight because sometimes we're greedy. We want what we want. And when we don't get it, we try to take it from others or punish them for not giving us what we want. And sometimes we're self-centered. Maybe we didn't mean to be really selfish, but we didn't really think about how what we said or did might impact somebody else. We were busy just thinking about ourselves. And sometimes we're just defensive. When we're hurt, stressed, insecure, or feeling like things are just out of control, we often resort to selfishness to try to protect ourselves. We're like a wounded animal. We lash out at others when we feel threatened. We might not intend to be hurtful, but when we're hurting, we often hurt others. For all humans, selfishness, it's a reflex. But it doesn't usually accomplish what we think it's going to. Selfishness doesn't keep us safe or get us what we really need or make our lives better. Instead, selfishness leads to fighting and damaged relationships with others and with God. Well, what's the alternative to selfishness and conflict? Well, let's go back to James to see what it says. James 3:16 through 18 says, "For where there is envy and selfish ambition, there is disorder and every evil practice. But the wisdom from above is first pure, then peace-loving, gentle, compliant, full of mercy and good fruits, unwavering, without pretense. And the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace by those who cultivate peace." James is really calling us to be peacemakers. That's an interesting word if you really think about it. What it does is it tells us that peace isn't something that just happens accidentally. It needs to be made. It implies that it's normal to see fighting and conflict because you can't be a peacemaker when things are already peaceful, but it doesn't imply that all conflict is bad or should be avoided. James didn't tell us to be peacekeepers who silence or avoid anything disruptive or uncomfortable. Making peace is not the same thing as keeping peace. James also helps us see how that we might become peacemakers with wisdom that comes from heaven. Okay, so does that mean that God's going to drop little peacemaking instruction manuals from the sky? I mean, no. It means that God can teach us how to be peacemakers. Okay, well, how does he do that? Well, through the Holy Spirit who guides and empowers us, and through the words and example of Jesus, who is God in the flesh. In a conflict, you can never totally control the outcome, but you can always contribute to making peace in some small ways. And here are 3 ideas to help you get started. So first off, stop the drama, don't start it. We all start drama more than we care to admit. Our words, our looks, our actions, or inactions, they're all capable of hurting others and creating conflict. What small thing can you do this week to be a drama stopper instead of a drama starter? Secondly, build a bridge, don't burn it. When we're hurt or angry, we often want to hit back. We want to take revenge or we want to end a relationship. When a relationship is unhealthy or abusive, walking away is probably the best thing that you can do. But most of the time, the more radical and Jesus-like response is to reach out instead of push people away. Do you have any damaged relationships that could be repaired by rebuilding a bridge that you once burned? And then lastly, fight for others, not just yourself. Being a peacemaker isn't always about righting wrongs in your relationships. Sometimes it's about righting wrongs in the world. We can be peacemakers by fighting for others who need help or support or a friend or an advocate. Who's someone or something bigger than yourselves that you could fight for? And then also, we need to make peace with God. For the last few weeks, we've spent a lot of time talking about how Jesus teaches us to love others. But don't forget about Jesus' most important goal, which is to make a way for us to have peace with God. See, through Jesus' life, death, and resurrection, you and I have the opportunity to be close to God, even after our sin separates us. If you do have peace with God, then making peace with others is one of the ways you can join Jesus on his mission of bringing heaven to earth. You see, it's easy to fight for ourselves. It's much more radical to do the difficult thing and fight for peace. But this week, I hope you do.